So much like in the West, the most important day of the celebration is actually New Year's Eve rather than New Year's Day itself, which is known as 除夕. This is the day when families will gather together for a huge reunion dinner, which is sometimes referred to as the New Year's Eve banquet. Different families will prepare a wide variety of dishes for their New Year's Eve banquet, but of course there are some sort of traditional dishes that tend to get served around the like sort of in general on this day. So in Cantonese areas such as Guangdong province and Hong Kong, they traditionally eat spring rolls in order to symbolically take a bite out of the coming spring. In the north of China and sometimes in the south, they eat dumplings, which are believed to bring wealth to the people eating them because they resemble an old form of currency known as yuan bao. So if you've ever seen currency that's sort of like a sort of ingot type thing, it looks a bit like a dumpling, or dumplings look a bit like it. I guess that's the way around. It is more common in the south of China, however, for people to prepare a special type of glutinous rice cake known as niangao, or literally year cake, which is delicious, by the way. It's not sweet, so I don't really know why they call it a cake. I guess it's very dense, but you can cut it up and you can use it for so many things like stir fries. You can put it into noodle soups. I would highly recommend it if you like the taste of glutinous rice. You can buy it from Chinese supermarkets. I use it to cook way too much. So traditionally in the south of China, they will then send packages of the niangao to their family and friends before New Year's Eve. But then they'll cook some for themselves, either in stir-fried dishes or in soups. The term niangao is actually a homophone of the phrase increasingly prosperous each year, which is why they are considered an especially auspicious food to eat during the New Year period. Throughout China, families also prepare a bowl of longevity noodles, which are longer than normal noodles and unsurprisingly express the eater's wish to live a really long life. Alongside the banquet, there is also another tradition that forms a key part of New Year's Eve, which I did mention earlier. So this tradition is known as shou sui, or guarding the year, where the family members try to stay up for as long as possible. Some people will even stay up all night, as they believe it will guarantee that their parents will live for longer. Nowadays, most families have added a few more traditions to the festivities as sort of modern times have gone on. So, for example, wealthier families will host vibrant and very lavish firework displays outside of their homes, while almost all families throughout China will sit down together and watch at least part of what's known as the CCTV Spring Festival Gala. It is the most watched TV show in the world every year. It's a variety show that showcases aspects of traditional Chinese culture and lasts until the early morning of New Year's Day. They normally have some pretty good highlights on YouTube, so if you do want to go and watch it on the CCTV's channel, I would recommend it. It's quite sort of some bits. It's a bit hit and miss, but there's always at least a couple of really spectacular kind of shows within the showcase, the variety showcase. So New Year's Day officially begins at midnight, in much the same way as our New Year's Day does, and it is known as the Day of the Chicken. It is normally the time when families will light fireworks, burn bamboo poles, or set off firecrackers in an effort to ward off evil spirits. In fact, lighting firecrackers is a focal part of the celebrations throughout the day, and some people continue to practice the tradition of lighting firecrackers and throwing them at a household when they pay their visit. So this is something I didn't know about when I was living in China. I found out the hard way. One of the main traditions, particularly in rural China, is you have to go and visit a friend or family's house, and you have to try and throw firecrackers at their house without them noticing. I was staying at a student's house during this particular time, didn't know about the tradition. Me and my dog happened to be hidden behind a tree at the time, and someone threw some firecrackers and they landed at my feet. And I had to literally take my coat and sort of swoop over the dog, burn all the back of my legs. It was horrific. So that is how I found out about this particular custom. I wasn't hugely thrilled. They were very apologetic afterwards. They didn't mean to essentially burn me half to death. But yeah, so they do throw firecrackers a lot, and they're quite dangerous. It's customary as well on New Year's Day to visit the households of older family members in order to wish them a happy new year and to pay your respects. Older family members will then give children what are known as I mentioned earlier, hongbao, or red packets, like the one you can see here, which are filled with money. And this character here, Fu, means happiness. So most hongbao have this character on them. Sometimes they'll have something else, like a cartoon character. Nowadays, it's kind of in vogue to have, there are Peppa Pig ones, for example. Peppa Pig is huge in China, and a lot of stuff. There are a lot of like Peppa Pig hongbao, Peppa Pig kind of lanterns, that kind of thing. Nowadays, however, it's not necessarily limited to children, and even people in their late 20s will be offered a hongbao by relatives, particularly if they're unmarried. I also was occasionally offered hongbao when I was living there at the age of 26. Oh no, I was 24, by older people because I was unmarried. Oftentimes, there is a huge mess left behind on New Year's Day, made up of old firecrackers, food wrappers, discarded hongbao, etc. But this will not be cleaned away because it's considered bad luck to use a broom on New Year's Day. It is believed that using a broom may cause you to symbolically sweep all of the good luck out of your house. Lighting fires and using knives is also considered to be bad luck, so people tend to eat leftover food from the New Year's Eve banquet on this day rather than making new food. The second day of Spring Festival is known as Kai Nian, or beginning of the year, and it was traditionally the time when married daughters would visit their birth parents, friends, and relatives, as they weren't able to do this very frequently during the year in imperial times. Nowadays, it is still observed as an important time to visit your relatives, and in particular, to pay respects to your in-laws. When you visit your in-laws, you're meant to take them gifts, but always in sets of two. So, for example, 2 bottles of wine, 2 packets of tea, an even number of apples, etc. It is also believed to be the birthday of a deity called Chikeng, who is worshipped in Hong Kong. So people in Hong Kong will go to temples dedicated to Chikeng on this day in order to pray for his blessing. The next day is known as Chikou, meaning red mouth, or sometimes Chigou, meaning red dog, which are both nicknames of a deity called the God of Blazing Wrath. What a great name. Some people in rural villages still continue to practice the tradition of burning paper money on this day as an offering to the god of blazing wrath. He sounds like the kind of person whose good side you definitely want to stay on. It's considered an unlucky day to go outside or to visit anyone, so people tend to stay at home. Oddly enough, however, the one exception to this rule is that it's considered an auspicious day to visit, of course, the temple of the god of wealth, not God of Blazing Wrath. He doesn't have very many temples, and have your fortune read. So that's the only sort of time it's acceptable to leave the house, or an auspicious thing to do. Now, according to tradition, the 4th day of the new year is a particularly auspicious time to welcome back the gods, as this is believed to be the day when the gods return from heaven to earth after their New Year's celebrations, because of course everyone celebrates throughout the Spring Festival. In particular, it is the day when families would traditionally welcome the kitchen god back into their home. As you can see here, a new image of the kitchen god is being pasted up. So you're not supposed to leave your house on this day. You've got to wait around for him to come back. Most families will burn incense and light candles to welcome the gods back on this particular day. The 5th day is meant to be the god of wealth's birthday, which means that the entire day is pretty much dedicated just to him. People will welcome him into their homes by opening up their windows or doors, letting off firecrackers to attract his attention, and also eating dumplings, as I said earlier, because they're a symbol of wealth. The 5th day is also known as the Day of the Cow. So, as I mentioned earlier, rather curiously in passing, the 1st day of the year is known as the Day of the Chicken. And in fact, each day thereafter is assigned an animal. Now, this is because, and I'm sure you may have guessed this already, according to Chinese folklore, this is the order in which the animals are created. So kind of like in Christianity with the 7-day events. So the 1st day is the chicken, 2nd day is the dog, the 3rd day is the pig, the 4th day is the sheep, the 5th is the cow, the 6th is the horse, and the 7th, of course, is us, mankind. Alongside being the god of wealth's birthday, the 5th day of the new year is known as the festival of Po Wu, which literally means to break the 5. This is because it's believed that the taboos associated with the new year, such as not using knives and not using brooms, can be broken on this day, so you can break the 5 taboos. Finally, on the 6th day of the new year, people take part in a ceremony that is designed to drive away what's known as another great name, the ghost of poverty. This ceremony can vary from region to region, but it basically involves throwing out any ragged clothes, garbage, broken items, or dirty things within your home. It is part of the symbolic gesture to do away with the old and bring in the new during the new year, and also to rid yourself of any symbols of poverty within your home. According to the legend, the ghost of poverty was actually the son of Emperor, I'm going to get this wrong, Juanshu. I've written this down wrong. Emperor Juanshu, one of the mythical emperors of ancient China. This son was supposedly short and weak and had a marked preference for wearing ragged clothes and eating simple food such as porridge, even though he was one of the wealthiest of the people in the country. Even when he was presented with fine new clothes and delicious food, he would refuse them or even toss them out. During his life, he was known as the man of poverty, and then, of course, in death, he became the ghost of poverty. Not a great legacy, I suppose. Now, as I mentioned before, the seventh day is traditionally regarded as the day when mankind was created. So it is literally known as Ren Zhi, or the birthday of mankind. It's our birthday. According to legend, this custom of celebrating mankind's birth on this day does date all the way back to the Han Dynasty, so around about the 2nd century BC. In imperial times, people would wear a special type of head ornament known as a rensheng, which was made of ribbon or gold and represented human beings. During the Tang Dynasty, so the second golden age in Chinese history, around about the 8th century, emperors would even grant their subjects ribbon or rensheng so they could join in with the festivities. People will avoid killing animals on their respective birthdays. So, for example, on day 1, because it's the day of the chicken, you shouldn't kill chickens, and so on and so on. And thus, on the birthday of mankind, obviously you should avoid killing people throughout the year, but prisoners are not punished in China traditionally on this day. One of the main customs celebrated on this day is the eating of special dishes such as qi cai geng, or 7 vegetable soup, and also qi cai zhou, or 7 vegetable congee, as well as qi di congee, or qi di zhou. As you can probably guess, it's believed that eating these dishes will ward off bad health and promote longevity in the coming year. Now, to kind of try and blitz through the last few days of the year before we get to the end of the festival, the 8th day is believed to be the birthday of millet, which was an integral crop in ancient times. According to folk traditions, if the day is bright and clear, then there will be a good harvest in the coming year on this day, kind of like the groundhog that sees its shadow. But if the weather is bad on this day, then that spells disaster for future crops. Another family dinner is held on this day because it is the eve of the birthday of the Jade Emperor, the ultimate ruler of heaven, as you can see here. Nowadays, this is also the day when people normally return to work in China. So this is when the public holiday ends. The 9th day is known as Tiangongsheng and is the birthday of the illustrious Jade Emperor. So understandably, again, the entire day is dedicated to him. It is particularly important to Hokkien people who speak what's known as Minnan. Traditionally, they're from Fujian province, but a lot of them live in Taiwan now. They often regard this particular day with as great a reverence, if not more, than the actual New Year's Day. This goes back to an ancient legend about how a group of Hokkien people were saved from being massacred after hiding in a sugarcane plantation on the 8th and 9th days of the new year, which coincided with the Jade Emperor's birthday. For this reason, Hokkien people will offer the Jade Emperor sugarcane on this day, since the word for sugarcane is a near homonym for the word thank you in the Hokkien dialect. The birthdays just kind of keep on coming after that, since the 10th day is believed to be the birthday of the god of stone. For this reason, it is forbidden to move any stone object on this day. Now, this might seem relatively trivial to you. Why would you need to move stone? But bear in mind that during imperial times, most rural communities would have depended on equipment such as stone rollers, stone mills, and stone mortars to prepare their crops. This is a really big deal to not be able to use stone. It is also forbidden to cut into the rocks of mountains or to build anything using stone on this particular day. Now, alongside burning incense and lighting candles, it is also customary to offer the god of stone some pancakes on this day. Finally, on the 11th day, there is a really odd tradition that dictates that fathers-in-law must entertain their sons-in-law on this day. There will often be a lot of leftover food, again, from celebrating the birthday of the Jade Emperor, so these leftovers are eaten on this day as well. From the 12th day onwards, the days are taken up by preparing for the Lantern Festival, which represents the final day of the festivities, but it really goes out with a bang. And I'm sure people will have heard of this festival before. It's often sort of regarded as its own festival in its own right, but it does actually form part of the Spring Festival tradition. In Chinese, it's known as Yuan Xiaojie up here. for anyone who's curious. So the Lantern Festival is the 15th and final day of Spring Festival, but they definitely go out with a bang. So traditionally, the Lantern Festival represented one of the few times when unmarried young men and women were allowed to mingle freely, which made it sort of like proto-Valentine's Day. That being said, the emphasis wasn't so much on love as it was on closing off the Spring Festival festivities, so to speak. One of the main customs during the Lantern Festival is the hanging up of special lanterns, which often contain riddles within them. So the idea behind it is you go and look at the lanterns, you look at the riddles. If you solve the riddle within the lantern, you're supposed to take the paper riddle out of the lantern, find the person who wrote it, and tell them your answer. If you're correct, then they're meant to give you a prize. Alongside these puzzle lanterns, people will often let paper lanterns loose into the night sky, or also place them on the river to float down the river, as it is believed that these lanterns can guide wayward spirits back to the underworld. Now, another focal custom during the festival is the eating of, and this is where the big north-south divide comes in, the eating of sweet glutinous rice balls that have been brewed in a sweet soup, which are known as tangyuan in the south and yuanxiao in the north. So the name for the Lantern Festival, yuanxiao, comes from these particular glutinous rice balls. In fact, as I said, the festival's name, I've written it down, derives from the balls themselves. There is actually a genuine degree of difference between these two different types, however. They are typically filled with sweet red bean paste, sesame paste, or peanut butter. But tangyuan are made by wrapping the glutinous rice around the filling by hand, while yuanxiao are made by rolling the balls of the filling in a bamboo tray that's been lined with glutinous rice flour until they become kind of covered over time. That being said, they do taste, I'm going to be controversial here, they do taste quite similar. The round shape of the balls is said to represent family togetherness. So eating tangyuan or yuanxiao with those closest to you is said to bring about familial harmony, happiness, and luck in the new year. And with all that out of the way, it is time for our discussion period. I do also have some Lantern Festival riddles if anyone wants to do them. So I'll probably do that after we've had some of the questions.